Imagine getting pulled over for no reason other than the color of your skin. The officer mocks you, humiliates you, and believes he's untouchable. But what happens when the man he's harassing isn't just an ordinary driver, but the head of internal affairs, the very person who has the power to end his career in seconds? Stay tuned, because this story will leave you stunned. Pull over. The sharp wail of a siren tore through the night air, and flashing red and blue lights painted the empty street in waves of color. Tires screeched softly as a sleek black sedan eased to the curb, its headlights cutting off in obedience. Inside sat a man in a tailored suit, his hands steady on the steering wheel. His name was Mr. Harris, calm, composed, and carrying himself with quiet dignity. Still, a trace of curiosity flickered in his eyes. Why was he being stopped? He had done nothing wrong. The patrol car door slammed shut, breaking the silence. Out stepped Officer Daniels, strutting toward the vehicle with the kind of confidence that came from authority, but also from arrogance. He tugged at his duty belt as if to remind the world he wore a badge, his boots striking the pavement with a heavy rhythm. To him, this wasn't just another traffic stop. It was an opportunity. Daniels didn't see the well-groomed man behind the wheel as a professional returning home from work. He didn't see an equal. He saw only skin color, and with it, a chance to exert power. License and registration. Daniels snapped, his voice carrying no greeting, no explanation. He barked the order before the man could even ask what the stop was about. Inside the sedan, Harris moved slowly, deliberately. He knew the rules. Sudden movements could escalate a simple stop into something far more dangerous. He reached into his wallet, withdrew his license, and offered it along with the registration through the open window. His tone was polite, steady. "Is there a problem, officer?" Daniels barely glanced at the documents before sneering, his lips curling in disdain. "You tell me, a car like this? At this hour? Don't play dumb." The implication hung heavy in the air. Daniels wasn't interested in facts. He had already written the narrative in his head. To him, Harris didn't belong in a luxury vehicle. Not on this street. Not at this time of night. A few people on the sidewalk slowed their steps, their eyes drawn to the flashing lights and the sharp tension simmering in the air. Some whispered to each other, sensing the hostility in Daniels' tone. The night had been calm until now, but this was quickly becoming something else. Harris took a deep breath, his face unreadable. This wasn't the first time he had been subjected to this kind of treatment. He had long learned the art of patience, of remaining calm when others sought to provoke. But something in his quiet eyes hinted that this stop would not play out the way Officer Daniels expected. Daniels, however, didn't notice. He was too busy letting his prejudice guide his actions, mistaking Harris's calm for weakness. What he didn't realize was that the man standing before him wasn't powerless. Harris wasn't simply a target for his intimidation. He was far more than what Daniels assumed. And soon, the officer's smug confidence would be shattered by a truth he never saw coming. Officer Daniels moved like a predator sizing up prey, circling the black sedan with a smug expression plastered across his face. Each step was deliberate, his boots scraping against the pavement as if the sound itself was meant to intimidate. He leaned over, peering through the windows, as though expecting to find contraband lying in plain sight. Then he straightened, one hand hovering near his holster, not because there was danger, but because the gesture made him feel in control. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle?" he ordered, his tone dripping with suspicion. It wasn't a question, it was a command. Mr. Harris unbuckled his seat belt slowly, his movements calm, measured. He opened the door and stepped out, his suit still sharp despite the long day, his posture unshaken. He carried himself with quiet authority, a presence that didn't match Daniels' narrative of a guilty man caught red-handed. But Daniels wasn't interested in composure or dignity. He wanted to break it. His eyes narrowed as he smirked. "What's a guy like you doing in a car like this?" His voice rose loud enough for the gathering bystanders to hear. "Must be stolen, right? Or maybe you're running drugs." A few murmurs rippled through the small crowd that was beginning to form at the edges of the sidewalk. Smartphones were raised, their cameras recording every word, every movement. In today's world, such encounters rarely stayed hidden. Harris, however, didn't flinch. He raised an eyebrow, his voice calm and measured. "I'm on my way home from work. I'd appreciate if you handled this stop professionally." Daniels chuckled darkly, leaning closer, his breath hot with arrogance. "Professional," he mocked. "I'll decide what's professional here." His hand twitched toward the cuffs hanging at his belt. "People like you always think you're above the law. Not tonight." The insult cut through the air, hanging heavy with unspoken meaning. Daniels' words weren't about enforcing the law. They were about putting Harris in his place, reminding him of a hierarchy the officer believed existed. By now, the crowd had grown larger, drawn in by the flashing lights and the sharp edge of confrontation. Voices could be heard from the sidelines. "Why is he messing with him?" someone muttered. "This doesn't look right." Another whispered, phones still pointed at the scene. Daniels ignored them, convinced his badge gave him control. His grin widened as he toyed with the cuffs, enjoying the spectacle. He leaned in, speaking just loud enough for the cameras to capture. "Let's see how smug you are in a holding cell." But Harris's expression remained unchanged. His calm gaze followed every twitch, every inflection in Daniels' voice. Outwardly, he was the picture of restraint. Inwardly, he was cataloging each action, each violation of protocol. Because while Officer Daniels thought he was tightening the noose, the truth was the rope was wrapping around his own neck. Harris knew something Daniels didn't. The kind of knowledge that could flip this entire situation upside down in an instant. And when the time was right, that truth would shatter the officer's confidence and his career. Daniels wasn't letting go. The more calm Harris appeared, the more determined the officer became to rattle him. His voice carried down the block, sharp and abrasive. "You got drugs in the trunk? Weapons? Maybe some stolen goods?" He tapped the trunk with the back of his hand, as though daring the man to protest. "Don't look so calm. I've seen your type 100 times before." Harris's eyes, cool and watchful until now, sharpened. His voice dropped into a firmer register, steady but edged with warning. "Officer, I suggest you be very careful with how you proceed." The words hit Daniels like a challenge. He smirked, puffing his chest out, and scoffed. "Or what? You gonna teach me a lesson?" His laugh came out loud, mocking, but as it echoed down the street, it landed flat. The spectators weren't laughing. Their faces were tight with disapproval. Their phones were still pointed directly at him, red lights blinking like silent accusations. From the sidelines, a woman's voice cut through the tension. "He didn't do anything. Leave him alone." Another man raised his voice, angrier, more defiant. "This is harassment. We're recording everything." For the first time, Daniels' jaw tightened, but his arrogance wouldn't let him back down. He took one step closer to Harris, invading his personal space, his tone dropping into a growl. "You think your suit makes you better than me? That fancy car? Not tonight. Tonight, you learn who's in charge." The line was crossed. Harris had given him every opportunity to act professionally, to recognize the line between authority and abuse. But Daniels had chosen to ignore it, and that decision was about to cost him everything. Harris's hand moved slowly, deliberately, to the inside pocket of his blazer. The crowd's breath seemed to hold all at once. Was he reaching for something? Daniels instinctively twitched toward his holster. But Harris's calm never wavered. He pulled out a sleek, worn leather wallet, its edges softened by years of use. With a flick of his hand, he opened it and held it forward. Under the glare of the streetlights, the gold badge inside gleamed like a truth that could no longer be denied. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The bold letters etched across the badge told the entire story. Internal Affairs, Division Chief. Daniels froze. The smirk that had been glued to his face for the last 10 minutes evaporated in an instant. His eyes darted from the badge to Harris's steady gaze, then to the crowd, their phones capturing his every reaction. The officer's swagger dissolved into a stiff posture, his mouth suddenly dry. Harris's voice, calm but now ringing with undeniable authority, cut through the night air. "What you just done, Officer Daniels, will be reviewed. Every word, every action. I warned you to be careful." He closed the wallet with a soft snap that felt louder than the siren still wailing in the background. The crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in murmurs of vindication. Someone whispered, "Internal affairs?" Another said louder, "Oh, he's done for." For the first time, Daniels realized the power wasn't in his badge anymore. It had shifted entirely, and there was no way to claw it back. Daniels froze as though his body no longer obeyed him. The easy arrogance that had dripped from his voice all evening evaporated like mist under the sun. His smirk vanished, leaving only the raw, unguarded panic of a man who had finally realized the weight of his mistakes. The crowd that had gathered erupted in a collective gasp. They had come expecting another all-too-common scene of harassment, another injustice to be filmed and uploaded online. Instead, they were witnessing something far rarer, a man in power being caught red-handed by someone far above his reach. Harris stood tall, his presence radiating authority without needing to raise his voice. His words, steady and deliberate, sliced through the silence like a blade. "Officer Daniels, you've just profiled, harassed, and attempted to falsely accuse the head of internal affairs." Each syllable was a hammer striking nails into the coffin of Daniels' career. Daniels' throat bobbed as he tried to swallow, his voice cracking when he finally managed to speak. I didn't know. I was just." Harris lifted a hand, palm outward, the gesture firm and commanding. "No excuses." The words were sharp, absolute. "Your actions tonight weren't just unprofessional. They were disgraceful. And the worst part," he paused, letting the silence hang heavy, "you didn't care that people were watching. You thought you were untouchable." A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, "He's finished." Another voice chimed in, louder, "This is justice right here." The cameras never wavered, their tiny red recording lights like dozens of unblinking eyes documenting every second. Daniels' chest heaved as his breath grew shallow, the confidence once puffing him up now replaced with a trembling desperation. His hands twitched at his sides, unsure whether to reach for his belt, his hat, or to simply hide them in shame. The silence between Harris's sentences was louder than any siren, an unrelenting reminder of the collapse unfolding before him. Harris took a step closer, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. He didn't need to shout. Authority radiated from him naturally, a contrast to the false bravado Daniels had wielded earlier. "Do you understand what this means, officer? Every word you spoke, every action you took. It's on record." Those bystanders, he gestured toward the sea of phones. "They've just become witnesses, not to your authority, but to your abuse of it." Daniels' lips parted, but no words came out. His face was pale now, beads of sweat forming at his temple despite the cool night air. The predator from minutes ago was gone. What remained was a man stripped bare of power, staring at the consequences he had never thought he'd face. The silence stretched. Then Harris leaned in slightly, his voice dropping low, cold enough to chill the night air. "You thought your badge gave you power, but a badge means nothing without integrity. Tonight, you showed the world exactly who you are." The crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in applause. It was quiet at first, then stronger, a wave of approval that made Daniels flinch. Each clap was a reminder that the tables had turned, and there was no undoing it. Daniels stood frozen, his career unraveling before his very eyes. And Harris, calm and unshaken, knew the lesson had been delivered. Harris stepped closer, his polished shoes echoing against the pavement, each step deliberate, each one heavy with authority. His presence was commanding, not because of volume or anger, but because of the undeniable weight of truth in his words. His voice cut through the night air, resonating with every single person present. "You were a badge to protect, not to abuse. To uphold the law, not to twist it against those you judge unfairly." He paused, letting the words sink in, his eyes locked on Daniels. "If this is how you treat citizens, innocent people who've done nothing wrong, then you don't deserve to wear that uniform." The officer's face burned red under the glow of the streetlights. His shoulders slumped, his earlier bravado gone like smoke in the wind. Daniels stared at the ground, unable to meet Harris's gaze. Shame clung to him like a second skin, heavier with every second that passed. He knew, deep down, that his career, his reputation, and everything he thought untouchable were hanging by a single, fraying thread. Harris didn't stop there. He turned slowly, facing the crowd of bystanders whose phones were still recording, their eyes wide with awe. His voice carried further now, no longer directed at just one man, but at everyone within earshot. "This is why accountability matters," Harris declared. His tone was firm, unwavering. "Nobody is above the law, not even those who enforce it. Justice belongs to everyone, not just the privileged, not just the powerful. And when those sworn to protect abuse their authority, it is our duty to hold them responsible." A cheer erupted from the crowd. It began with a few claps, then spread into a chorus of applause and shouts of agreement. "That's right," someone called out. Finally, someone said it. Daniels, however, remained frozen. His badge suddenly felt like a weight, not a shield. The same crowd that once might have ignored his misconduct was now united against him. And the man he tried to humiliate had turned into his greatest reckoning. Harris walked back to his sleek black car, his composure unbroken. The crowd parted for him with respect, like he was a general returning from battle. He opened the driver's door and paused, looking once more toward Daniels. "Remember this moment, officer. Respect, fairness, and justice, they're not optional. They are the foundation of the badge you wear. Forget that, and the badge means nothing." The words lingered in the air, sharp and unrelenting. Daniels could barely breathe under the weight of them. As Harris closed his car door and started the engine, the crowd erupted again, this time in admiration, not just for what had happened, but for what it meant. Daniels remained where he stood, his legs heavy, his career unraveling before his eyes. That night, the officer who once believed he was untouchable learned the hardest truth: power without integrity is nothing. And the man he tried to diminish wasn't just another driver. He was a living reminder that no one should ever be judged by skin color, but by the content of their character. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories.